Ben stood at the window of his transport ship and watched the planet Nexira grow larger in the viewing screen. The world looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Purple and blue lights danced across its surface, creating patterns that seemed almost alive. His stomach felt heavy with worry. In just a few hours, he would marry a complete stranger to save 2 worlds from destruction. The mission briefing had been simple but terrifying. Earth needed allies against the Shadow Swarm, mysterious creatures that ate energy from entire star systems. The Nexaron Empire was the only civilization powerful enough to help, but they only made alliances through marriage bonds. Ben was chosen because he spoke some Nexaron language and had studied alien cultures. What the briefing did not mention was how scared he would feel. Approaching Nexora City, announced Captain Rosa from the cockpit. "Are you ready for this, Ben?" Ben touched the small bag of Earth seeds in his pocket, as ready as anyone can be for marrying someone they have never met. The ship landed in a crystalline port that sparkled like diamonds. Tall Nexaran beings waited for him, their skin shimmering with natural patterns of light. They wore long robes that seemed to be made from the same crystal material as their buildings. Ben had studied their appearance, but seeing them in person still took his breath away. A tall Nexaran with golden light patterns approached him. "Welcome, human Ben. I am Ambassador Kalo. We are honored by your presence." Ben bowed the way he had practiced. "Thank you for accepting this alliance." The journey to the palace took them through streets made entirely of crystal. Buildings grew from the ground like enormous gems, each one catching and reflecting light in amazing ways. Ben pulled out his sketching pad and began drawing the architecture. He had always found that drawing helped him understand new places. "You create images?" asked Ambassador Kalo, noticing the sketching. "Yes. It helps me remember beautiful things," Ben replied, showing him a quick drawing of the crystal spires. Ambassador Kalo's light patterns shifted to brighter colors. "Interesting. Princess Zara also enjoys creating, though she must not show this in public." The palace was the most magnificent building Ben had ever seen. It rose into the clouds like a mountain made of pure light. Inside, the walls showed moving images of Nexaran history, and the ceiling displayed the real-time view of space above them. Ben felt very small and very far from home. In a grand hall filled with hundreds of Nexaran nobles, Ben waited for his bride. He wore the formal Earth diplomatic uniform, which suddenly felt plain and simple compared to the glowing robes around him. His hands shook slightly as he held the small gift. Box containing seeds from Earth's rarest flowers. Princess Zara entered from the far end of the hall. She was smaller than most Nexarans, with silver light patterns that flickered nervously across her pale blue skin. Her robe was the most elaborate one Ben had seen, covered in tiny crystals that created rainbow patterns as she moved, but her expression looked as unhappy as Ben felt. The ceremony was conducted in ancient Nex, with Ambassador Kalo translating the important parts for Ben. They exchanged crystal rings that would glow when both people were healthy and happy. Ben noticed that both rings remained dim throughout the ceremony. When it came time for the traditional gift exchange, Ben offered his box of seeds. Princess Zara opened the box carefully. Inside were seeds from earth roses, sunflowers, and oak trees, each one carefully labeled in both English and Nex. For the first time during the ceremony, her light patterns brightened with genuine interest. She studied each seed with curiosity before offering her own gift. She handed Ben a small crystal sculpture that showed 2 different worlds connected by a bridge of light. The craftsmanship was incredible, with tiny details that Ben could only see by looking closely. "You made this?" he asked in careful Nexaran. Zara nodded but looked around nervously. Creating art was apparently not something princesses were supposed to admit in public. Ben understood that feeling. On Earth, diplomats were not supposed to show too much emotion or personal interest during formal ceremonies. After the ceremony, Ben was taken to his new quarters in the palace. The rooms were beautiful but felt cold and empty. Everything was made of crystal and metal, with no soft textures or warm colors like he was used to on Earth. He unpacked his few belongings and placed a photo of his family on the crystal desk. Looking at their faces made his homesickness even stronger. That evening, servants brought him Nexaran food, which tasted like nothing he had ever experienced. Some dishes were sweet, others were bitter, and a few seemed to change flavor as he chewed them. He ate alone, wondering what Princess Zara was doing, and whether she felt as lonely as he did. As Ben prepared for bed, he heard soft sounds coming from somewhere nearby. Following the sounds, he discovered they came from a small garden area visible through his window. Someone was tending to plants in the moonlight. Moving carefully among beds of Nexaran crystal flowers that glowed softly in the darkness, Ben realized he was not the only one in the palace who found comfort in growing things. Tomorrow, he decided, he would try to learn more about his new wife and her secret interests. Maybe their arranged marriage did not have to remain as cold and formal as it had begun. The seeds in his gift box represented hope for new growth. Perhaps his marriage could grow into something meaningful too. The next morning, Ben woke up feeling confused about where he was. The crystal walls caught the early sunlight and filled his room with dancing rainbows. For a moment, he forgot he was millions of miles from Earth. Then reality returned, and he remembered his new situation as a married man on an alien world. A soft knock came at his door. Ben opened it to find a young Nexaran servant carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Prince Ben. I am Myra, your assigned helper." "Please, just call me Ben," he said, accepting the tray. "I am not used to being called Prince." Myra smiled, her light patterns showing cheerful yellow colors. "As you wish, Ben. Princess Zara asked me to tell you that she will show you the palace today after you finish eating." Ben ate quickly, curious to explore his new home and spend time with his wife. The breakfast included fruits that tasted like honey mixed with starlight and bread that was somehow both solid and airy. Everything on Nexora seemed to have magical qualities that Earth food lacked. Princess Zara met him in the main hallway. In daylight, Ben could see her features more clearly. She had kind eyes that reminded him of Earth's ocean, and her silver light patterns moved gently across her skin like slow waves. She wore a simpler robe today, though it still sparkled with embedded crystals. "Good morning, Ben," she said in careful English. "I hope you slept well." "Good morning, Zara. Yes, thank you. Your English is very good." She looked pleased at the compliment. "I have studied Earth languages for many years. I find human communication very interesting." They began walking through the palace corridors. Zara explained the history of different rooms and showed him portraits of past rulers. Ben pulled out his sketching pad and drew quick pictures of the most interesting architectural details. He noticed that Zara watched his drawing with fascination. "On Earth, anyone can learn to draw," Ben explained as he sketched a crystal column. "Children often start with simple pictures of their families or pets." "Pets?" Zara asked, unfamiliar with the word. "Animals that live with humans as companions. Dogs, cats, birds, they become part of the family." Zara's eyes widened with wonder. "Humans share their homes with other species by choice." "Yes, and we love them very much. I had a dog named Lucky who followed me everywhere." Ben drew a quick picture of Lucky in his sketching pad. They continued touring until they reached a section of the palace Ben had not expected to see. Behind a crystal door was a large greenhouse filled with plants from dozens of different worlds, but many of the plants looked sick, with wilted leaves and dull colors. "This was my grandmother's garden," Zara explained sadly. "She collected plants from every world the Nexoran Empire visited, but I cannot keep them healthy like she did." Ben walked among the struggling plants and recognized several species he had studied. Some of these need different types of soil. Others need more water or less light. He knelt next to a dying earth rosebush. "This one is from my world. It needs special care to survive here. You know about plants? My mother taught me gardening when I was young. On Earth, many people grow their own food and flowers." Ben examined the rosebush more closely. "I think I can help this one recover." Zara's light patterns brightened with excitement. "Really? You would teach me?" "Of course. But first, I need some things from my room." Ben retrieved his seeds and a small container of earth soil he had brought for growing emergency food. When he returned to the greenhouse, Zara had gathered various Nexoran tools and containers. Working together, they carefully transplanted the rosebush into a mixture of earth soil and Nexoran crystal dust. Ben showed Zara how to test soil moisture with her finger and how to prune dead branches without hurting the healthy parts. "On Nexira, we use crystal resonance to help plants grow," Zara explained. She held a small blue crystal near the rosebush and hummed softly. The crystal began to glow, and Ben watched in amazement as the plant's leaves grew slightly greener. "That is incredible," Ben said. "Human plants would grow much better with that technique." They spent the entire afternoon working in the greenhouse. Zara showed Ben how different crystals affected plant growth, while Ben taught her about composting, crop rotation, and natural pest control. Despite their language barriers, they communicated well through gestures and demonstrations. As evening approached, they had successfully treated a dozen struggling plants. Both of them had dirty hands and tired smiles. Ben realized this was the first time since arriving on Nexora that he had felt truly happy. "Ben," Zara said quietly as they cleaned their tools, "I was afraid when I learned about our marriage. I thought you would be like other diplomats who only care about politics and power." "I was scared too," Ben admitted. "I thought you would find humans boring and primitive." "Humans are not boring. You see beauty in simple things and you care for other living creatures. These are wonderful qualities." Ben felt warmth spreading through his chest. "Nexorans are not cold and emotionless like some Earth people believe. You have deep feelings and incredible knowledge." That evening, they ate dinner together in the greenhouse, surrounded by plants that were already looking healthier. They talked about their different worlds, sharing stories about their families and dreams. Ben learned that Zara had always wanted to travel and explore new places, while she discovered that Ben hoped to become an ambassador who could help different species understand each other. As they parted ways for the night, both of them felt something had changed between them. Their marriage was still an arrangement made by others, but it was beginning to grow into something real and meaningful. Like the plants they had saved together, 3 weeks after their first day in the greenhouse, Ben and Zara had developed a comfortable routine. Every morning they worked together caring for the plants, which were now thriving beyond anyone's expectations. The earth roses had begun blooming with colors more vibrant than any Ben had seen back home, enhanced by Nexaron crystal energy. Their friendship had grown as steady and strong as the recovering garden. The palace was preparing for the Festival of Harmony, a celebration held once every Nexaran year to honor their cultural heritage. Ben watched servants hanging crystal decorations that created musical sounds when touched by the wind. The preparations reminded him of Earth holidays, though everything here was much more formal and organized. The festival has been celebrated the same way for over 1,000 years, Zara explained as they walked through the decorated halls. Every song, every dance, every speech follows ancient tradition exactly. That sounds very respectful of your history, Ben said, though he noticed something sad in Zara's voice. Yes, but sometimes I wonder what new celebrations we might create if we were allowed to change things. Ambassador Kalo found them near the main festival hall. Prince Ben, the Royal Council requests that you perform something from Earth culture during tomorrow's ceremony. They wish to honor our new alliance. Ben felt nervous excitement. What kind of performance would be appropriate? Something that represents the best of human traditions. Ambassador Kalo replied, "You have 1 day to prepare." That evening, Ben sat in his room trying to decide what to perform. He could sing an Earth song, but the Nexaran language was still difficult for him. He could tell a story, but he worried about cultural differences making it confusing. Finally, he remembered something his grandmother had taught him years ago. The next morning, Ben asked Zara to meet him in the greenhouse before the festival began. "I want to show you what I plan to perform today, but I need your help to make it work." Ben had brought his sketching pad and some colored pencils he had packed from Earth. "In my culture, we have something called storytelling through pictures. My grandmother taught me to draw stories that could make people feel different emotions." He began sketching quickly while talking. "This is a story about a small seed that falls on hard ground." His pencil created a tiny seed on rocky soil. "Everyone says it will never grow because the conditions are wrong." He added dark clouds and harsh winds to the picture. "But the seed is determined to live." Ben drew roots pushing through the rocks. It finds small drops of water and tiny bits of soil. The sketch showed the seed beginning to sprout despite the difficult conditions. Zara watched with growing fascination as the story unfolded on paper. Ben's simple drawings told a complete tale of struggle, growth, and eventual success as the small plant became a beautiful tree that provided shelter for other living things. "This is wonderful," Zara whispered. "You create stories that people can see and feel at the same time. Would this kind of performance work at your festival?" Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. "Ben, what you just showed me is something Nexarans used to do long ago. We had artist storytellers who created visual narratives, but that tradition ended centuries ago when the Royal Council decided all art should follow approved patterns. Why would they stop something so beautiful? They believed that individual creativity led to chaos and disagreement. They thought unity required everyone to express themselves in the same way." Zara looked sad. "I have seen examples of the old art hidden in the palace vaults. It was incredible, but now it is forbidden." Ben felt a spark of an idea. "Would you show me this hidden art?" That afternoon, while the palace prepared for the evening festival, Zara led Ben through passages he had never seen before. They descended crystal stairs into underground chambers that held treasures from Nexera's past. When Zara activated light crystals, Ben gasped at what he saw. The walls were covered with artwork that combined visual beauty, musical tones, and even scents that changed as viewers moved through the space. Ancient Nexaran artists had created multisensory experiences that told stories about love, adventure, discovery, and hope. The creativity and emotional depth were breathtaking. "This is absolutely amazing," Ben said, studying a piece that seemed to show a journey between stars using crystalline sculptures that sang when touched. "These artists were geniuses. But now, all our art must be approved by the Royal Council before anyone can see it," Zara said. "Everything follows the same basic patterns. Nothing personal or individual is allowed." Ben turned to look at her. "Zara, what if we could find a way to combine the old Nexaran artistic traditions with human creativity? What if we could inspire young Nexarans to express themselves again? That would be wonderful, but also dangerous. The Royal Council believes individual expression threatens social order. But what if we started small? What if we showed them that creativity brings people together, instead of dividing them?" That evening at the festival, Ben performed his picture story for the assembled nobles. He drew and narrated the tale of the determined seed, but he added Nexaran elements he had learned from Zara. He used crystal dust to make parts of his drawing glow and included sounds that echoed Nexaran musical traditions. The audience watched in complete silence at first. Then, as the story reached its conclusion with the small tree providing shelter for many different creatures, soft sounds of appreciation began rippling through the crowd. Even the normally stern Royal Council members seemed moved by the performance. After the ceremony, several young Nexarans approached Ben and Zara with questions about human artistic techniques. They spoke quietly and looked around nervously, but their curiosity was obvious. Zara's eyes sparkled with hope as she translated their questions. The seeds of change had been planted, but Ben wondered if the Royal Council would allow them to grow. 2 months had passed since the Festival of Harmony, and the secret art movement Ben and Zara had started was growing quietly throughout the palace. Young Nexarans met in small groups to share creative ideas, always careful to avoid discovery by the royal council. Ben taught drawing techniques while Zara shared knowledge of the ancient multisensory art forms. Their marriage had transformed from duty into genuine partnership as they worked together toward a common goal. Everything changed on a quiet morning, when emergency alarms began ringing throughout the palace. Ben and Zara rushed from the greenhouse to find Ambassador Kalo waiting with terrible news. The shadow swarm has been detected, approaching our outer colonies, Kalo announced, his light patterns flickering with stress. 3 human settlements and 2 Nexaran mining stations have already gone dark. We estimate they will reach the main systems within days. Ben felt his stomach drop. He had studied reports about the shadow swarm during his diplomatic training. The creatures appeared as shifting darkness that consumed all forms of energy, leaving empty space where thriving worlds once existed. No weapons had ever proved effective against them. What are our defense options? Ben asked. The combined Earth and Nexaran fleets are moving to intercept them, Kalo replied. But previous encounters suggest traditional military approaches will not succeed. These entities absorb energy from any source, including our weapons and ships. Over the following days, reports from the outer systems grew worse. Military commanders from both Earth and Nexora tried every strategy they could think of. Energy weapons were absorbed by the creatures. Physical projectiles passed through them harmlessly. Even nuclear explosions only seemed to make the swarm stronger. Ben spent hours studying all available data about the shadow swarm, while Zara consulted ancient Nexaran records. They worked side by side in the palace library, searching for any information that might help. Most of the young Nexarans who had joined their art movement volunteered to help with research, bringing fresh perspectives to old problems. Look at this pattern, Ben said, showing Zara his analysis charts. The creatures always avoid certain types of electromagnetic frequencies, but the pattern is not random. It follows rules, like music or mathematics. Zara studied the data with growing excitement. Ben, this reminds me of something from our oldest legends. Ancient texts describe harmony crystals that could repel negative energy by creating perfect resonance with positive life force. But those are just stories, right? Maybe not. What if the harmony crystals worked by combining different types of consciousness? Nexaron, crystal technology guided by human emotional flexibility. Ben felt a spark of hope. You mean creating shields powered by cooperation between our species instead of traditional energy sources? Exactly. The shadow swarm feeds on pure energy. But what if we could generate something they cannot absorb? Something based on living thought and feeling instead of mechanical power. They brought their idea to Ambassador Kylo and the military commanders. The initial response was skeptical. General Hayes from Earth's forces shook his head. Human emotions are not a reliable power source for military equipment. Commander Vex from the Nexaran fleet agreed. Crystal resonance requires precise control and ancient knowledge that few possess today. But we have to try something different, Ben argued. Everything conventional has failed. Zara stepped forward. I believe this approach can work, but it requires both our peoples to trust each other completely. Humans must share their emotional energy while Nexarans provide crystal focus and amplification. The room fell silent. What Zara was proposing went against centuries of Nexaran tradition that kept different species separate in all important matters. Elder Morak, the leader of the royal council, spoke with stern authority. Princess Zara, you forget yourself. Nexaran technology has always been controlled exclusively by our people. Mixing human unpredictability with our crystal systems could cause catastrophic failures. With respect, Elder Morak, Zara replied calmly, our current approach is already failing catastrophically. Perhaps it is time to consider new possibilities? You speak like the young rebels in the palace who think tradition means nothing, Elder Morak said angrily. Your behavior has become unacceptable for a member of the royal family. Ben watched Zara's light patterns shift to determined silver. She was about to take a stand that could cost her everything. Then perhaps, Zara said clearly, it is time for the royal family to lead by example instead of hiding behind old fears. Elder Morak's patterns flared red with fury. By the authority of the royal council, I declare Princess Zara in violation of royal conduct. She will be confined to isolation chambers until the current crisis passes. No, Ben said, stepping beside his wife. If you exile her, you exile me too. We stand together. Ben, you do not understand what this means, Ambassador Kalo warned quietly. I understand perfectly. Zara is right. Our only chance is to combine human adaptability with Nexaran knowledge. If the council will not listen, then we will find another way. General Hayes looked between them and the Nexaran leaders. What exactly are you proposing? Ben took Zara's hand. We propose creating harmony shield generators using volunteer crews of both humans and Nexarans. Small groups working together to create resonance fields that the shadow swarm cannot absorb or penetrate. It has never been attempted, Commander Vex said, thoughtfully. Neither has survival. Against the shadow swarm, Zara replied. This crisis demands unprecedented solutions. The debate continued for hours, but as more reports of lost colonies arrived, even the most traditional leaders began considering desperate measures. Finally, Elder Morok agreed to allow one experimental Harmony Shield test, though he maintained that Zara would face consequences for her defiance once the crisis ended. Ben and Zara had won permission to try their revolutionary approach, but they both knew that failure would mean not only the destruction of their worlds, but the end of everything they had built together. The experimental Harmony Shield Station was built in record time using both Earth engineering and Nexaron crystal technology. Ben and Zara worked alongside volunteer crews from both species, teaching them how to synchronize human emotions with crystalline resonance patterns. The process required complete trust and understanding between partners from different worlds. On the day of the first test, Ben stood with Zara inside the shield generator chamber. Around them, 12 mixed teams of humans and Nexarans prepared to create an energy field unlike anything ever attempted. Each human partner focused on positive emotions while their Nexaran counterpart channeled those feelings through specially tuned crystals. Remember, Zara called out to the teams, "This is not about controlling the energy. It is about sharing it and letting it grow naturally." Ben placed his hands on the central crystal array. "Focus on hope, friendship, and the desire to protect what we love," he added. "Let those feelings flow freely." As the teams began their work, something magical happened. The crystals started glowing with warm, gentle light that pulsed in rhythm with human heartbeats. Instead of the cold, mechanical energy of traditional shields, this field felt alive and welcoming. Ben could sense the emotions of every person in the room, human and Nexaran alike, joining together in harmony. "Shield field, stable and expanding," reported Technical Officer Lin from Earth's science team. "Energy output is increasing naturally without any forced amplification." Outside the station, the first Shadow Swarm scouts approached the test area. The creatures moved like living darkness, consuming energy from every source they encountered. But when they touched the Harmony Shield, something unexpected occurred. Instead of absorbing the energy, the Shadow Swarm entities seemed confused and disoriented. They circled the shield repeatedly, unable to find a way to drain its power. The field was not composed of pure energy they could consume, but of living consciousness they could not understand or process. "It is working," breathed Commander Vex, watching the readings with amazement. "The creatures are retreating from the shield perimeter." The successful test led to rapid deployment of Harmony Shield generators throughout both Earth and Nexaron space. Training programs were established where humans and Nexarans learned to work together as shield partners. The process required cultural exchange on a massive scale, breaking down centuries of separation between the two species. Elder Morok watched these developments with growing wonder. The Harmony Shields not only protected against the Shadow Swarm, but also created bonds of friendship between humans and Nexarans that made future cooperation natural and easy. "Perhaps," he admitted to Ben and Zara during a council meeting, "tradition should grow and change like living things, rather than remaining frozen in place." The Shadow Swarm's main force arrived 3 weeks later, but found both human and Nexaran systems protected by networks of Harmony Shields, unable to feed on the unique consciousness-based energy. The creatures eventually moved on to search for easier targets in other parts of the galaxy. The victory celebration lasted 4 days, but Ben and Zara were already planning for the future. The crisis had proven that cooperation between species could achieve impossible things. They proposed establishing permanent joint communities where humans and Nexarans could live and work together. "Imagine what we could accomplish," Zara said to the combined leadership of both worlds. "Human creativity guided by Nexaron wisdom. Nexaron technology enhanced by human adaptability. Art, science, and culture growing in directions neither world could reach alone." The first interspecies colony was founded on a beautiful planet called Haven, located exactly between Earth and Nix. Ben and Zara volunteered to serve as its first governors, helping to design a society that honored both cultures while creating something entirely new. The colony's architecture blended crystalline Nexaran structures with organic Earth designs. Gardens combined plants from dozens of worlds, thriving through techniques that merged human agriculture with Nexaran crystal enhancement. The art centers showcased works that used both traditional methods and revolutionary new forms created through collaboration. Children grew up speaking both languages naturally and learning to appreciate the strengths of different perspectives. Young humans discovered the patient wisdom of Nexaran philosophy, while young Nexarans embraced the spontaneous creativity of human expression. Ben and Zara's own relationship had transformed completely from its arranged beginnings. They were no longer just diplomatic partners, but genuine companions who shared dreams, supported each other's goals, and found joy in their daily work together. Their marriage had become a living example of how understanding could bridge any difference. On the first anniversary of Haven Colony, they stood together watching sunset paint the crystal towers with golden light while Earth-style trees swayed in the gentle breeze. Children from both species played together in the gardens, their laughter mixing with the musical sounds of wind chimes made from Nexaran crystals. Thanks for watching.